While playing soccer on a hot summer day at a remote Nebraska farm, a young farm boy named Logan Anderson accidentally kicked his ball into his father's barn, a structure he was strictly forbidden to enter. Yet, when Logan slipped inside to retrieve the ball, what he discovered hidden among the hay bales made his heart race with a mix of fear, curiosity, and wonder. Logan, who was just 10 years old, wiped sweat from his forehead as he practiced soccer in the yard of his family's isolated farm. The relentless summer sun beat down mercilessly, turning the vast cornfield surrounding their property into a shimmering golden ocean that both dazzled and intimidated him. Despite the oppressive heat, Logan continued his determined practice, his mind fixed not only on his sport, but on the secrets that might lie beyond his everyday world. As he repeatedly kicked the ball against the weathered siding of their two-story farmhouse, Logan counted each successful kick under his breath, reciting the number 13 with quiet pride. The rhythmic thud of the ball had, over time, become the soundtrack of his long summer afternoons. Just then, his mother, Melissa Anderson, called from the kitchen window in a warm yet concerned tone. "Logan, I'm making some fresh lemonade. You should take a break soon before you get heat stroke." Even so, Logan nodded, his focus unwavering as he continued chasing his goal with the ball, never leaving his sight. Determined to reach 50 consecutive kicks before stopping, Logan repeated his challenge. Soccer was his escape, the one thing that made him feel like a normal kid despite the isolation of their rural life. But as he neared his 48th kick, he drew his leg back with extra force, envisioning a powerful strike to complete his self-imposed challenge. The moment his foot met the ball, he immediately realized he had miscalculated the force needed. The ball soared high into the air, far beyond his intended target, arching gracefully toward the old red barn that stood at the very edge of their property. Time itself seemed to slow as Logan watched helplessly, his heart pounding and climbing into his throat. With a sound as shocking and sudden as a gunshot, the ball crashed through one of the dusty barn windows, sending shards of glass cascading in the sunlight. Logan froze as his heart raced uncontrollably while he stared at the forbidden barn, knowing that his father, Robert Anderson, had made it abundantly clear that no one was allowed near that structure, especially after the loss of the farm's main cattle contract the previous year. The barn had been off limits for months, with Robert claiming that it was being used to store dangerous equipment and supplies. In a mix of panic and remorse, Logan muttered "stupid, stupid, stupid," under his breath as anxiety rose within him. His father's impending fury over the broken window threatened to overwhelm him, yet leaving the ball behind was not an option. That soccer ball was the only decent piece of sports equipment he possessed, a birthday gift from his uncle before he moved away. And in these hard times, his father refused to spend money on what he dismissed as frivolous items. As Logan scanned the driveway in relief to see that his father's mud-splattered pickup truck was still missing from sight, Robert had mentioned checking the irrigation system in the north field earlier, which meant he might not be back for another hour. He cautiously approached the barn. Each careful footfall filled him with increasing dread. The massive structure loomed, its red paint peeling off to reveal weathered wood underneath. As Logan neared, he noticed something very odd. The large padlock on the barn door was unlocked and hanging loosely on its latch. Surely, his father must have forgotten to secure it properly during his morning inspection. For a moment, every instinct told Logan to turn around and alert his mother about the broken window and face the punishment that would surely follow. Yet an inexplicable curiosity pushed him forward. Taking a deep breath, he mustered his courage and pushed against the heavy door, wincing at the loud creak that shattered the silence of that sweltering afternoon. The door swung open slowly, revealing a shadowy interior bathed in streaming sunlight, which danced over dust particles suspended in the air. The interior smelled richly of hay and old wood, though Logan detected an underlying mustiness that he could not quite identify. Comforted by the relative coolness inside compared to the burning heat outdoors, his eyes adjusted to the dimness as he scanned every corner of the barn. Farm equipment lay under tarps along one wall, and neatly stacked hay bales filled another section. Logan's relief was palpable when he spotted his ball lying near a pile of hay in the center of the barn. He moved toward it with tentative hope that if he just grabbed the ball quickly, his father would never know he had been inside the forbidden building. However, as he ventured further inside, his heart skipped a beat when he noticed something unexpected: a small makeshift bed constructed of hay bales, topped with some kind of mattress or bedding, partially hidden behind stacked feed bags. More shocking than the bed itself was the realization that someone was lying on it. A young girl in a faded pink dress was sleeping peacefully on the improvised cot, and Logan's soccer ball lay on the straw-covered floor near her feet. Compelled by a mixture of trepidation and overwhelming curiosity, Logan took a hesitant step closer. In that quiet moment, his fears slowly gave way to concern as he saw that the girl, who appeared to be around 6 years old, lay on the thin mattress. Her blonde hair was tangled and dirty, and her clothes, worn and far too small for her delicate frame, spoke of a forgotten past. The once bright pink dress was now faded and stained, and beside her rested a plastic bucket, a half-empty water bottle, and what looked like the remains of a sandwich. A creak from the floorboard beneath Logan's foot startled her, causing her eyes to fly open in terror. For a moment, they simply stared at each other in silence, neither moving nor speaking as Logan tried to make sense of the surreal scene unfolding before him. The girl's eyes were wide with fear, and her small body tensed as though she were preparing to flee or defend herself. With a voice barely audible, Logan softly introduced himself. "Hi, I'm Logan. I live in the house. Who are you?" The frightened girl said nothing. Instead, she pulled her knees to her chest and pressed herself against the wall behind the makeshift bed. Her eyes darted uncertainly toward the barn door and then back to Logan, as though calculating her chance for escape. With gentle reassurance, Logan added, "I'm not going to hurt you. Why are you in our barn? Are you lost?" But before the girl could reply, the distant rumble of his father's tractor broke the silence, a sound unmistakably signaling that Robert was returning from the fields earlier than expected. Panic surged through Logan's body as his heart hammered against his ribs. The girl's eyes widened even further at that sound, and she shrank back against the wall, pulling a thin blanket over herself in a desperate bid to hide. In that fraught moment, her reaction spoke volumes. She was terrified of his father. Without a second thought, Logan abandoned his soccer ball and turned to run toward the barn door. In his hurried escape, he closed the door behind him, though in his haste he forgot to properly replace the padlock. He sprinted several yards away from the barn before forcing himself to slow down to a more controlled walk, trying desperately to appear normal despite the rush of adrenaline coursing through his veins. Soon enough, Robert's pickup truck came into view, dust billowing behind it as it approached the farmyard. Logan considered making a dash for the house, but he knew that would only draw more attention. Instead, he stood his ground, struggling to control his breathing and steady his trembling hands. As his father parked the tractor near the barn, Robert's weathered face immediately contorted into an expression of rage, and he leapt from the seat to storm toward his son, eyes flicking between Logan and the broken window, now clearly visible in the afternoon light. In a low, dangerous tone, he demanded, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His towering figure, broad shoulders, calloused hands, and sunburned face left no doubt that he was not a man to be crossed. "You know damn well you're not supposed to be anywhere near this barn," he growled. Logan's mouth suddenly went dry, and he stammered, "I'm sorry, Dad. My ball went through the window accidentally," forcing himself to meet his father's stern gaze. "But I didn't go inside to get it. I was just looking at the damage." Robert's eyes narrowed further in suspicion as he glanced at the barn door and noted the missing padlock. His jaw tightened, and after a long, tense pause, he stated coldly, "I'll retrieve your ball later, and you'll work off the cost of that window with extra chores." Leaning down close to Logan, he added with a finality that brooked no argument, "Let me make myself perfectly clear. You are never to go near this barn again. It's dangerous in there with all the equipment and chemicals. Do you understand me?" Logan, meekly replying, "Yes, sir," fought the urge to retreat further. Satisfied with his son's response, Robert straightened up and barked, "Now go help your mother in the house. I've got work to do." As Logan walked away, his father's eyes burned into his back, and troubled questions began to swirl in his mind about the frightened girl hidden in the barn. Despite his curiosity, he knew better than to ask. He hurried away, his shoulders tense with anxiety, and retreated to his bedroom. There, sitting on the edge of his bed, he stared out the window toward the barn, haunted by the image of the terrified girl that refused to leave his mind. Time passed in a fog of worry and confusion until his mother, Melissa, called him from the porch for both him and his father to come inside for dinner. Though he managed a quick smile for his mother as he hurried indoors, the memory of the barn's dark secret lingered heavily in his thoughts. Inside the house, as Logan quickly scrubbed his hands in the bathroom, attempting to wash away the haunting memory of what he had seen, the girl's terrified face returned vividly every time he closed his eyes. At the dinner table, Robert devoured his food with barely a pause, interspersed with occasional grumbles about the 30% increase in feed store prices since last summer. "Highway robbery is what it is," he muttered between bites. "How's a family farm supposed to survive when the big corporations keep squeezing us dry?" Melissa nodded sympathetically as she pushed her food around her plate. Her once delicate features were now etched with deep worry, and her voice carried a quiet resignation when she offered, "Maybe things will improve next season." Robert snorted dismissively, "Not likely. Not with those vultures at the bank breathing down our necks." Throughout the meal, Logan ate silently, his mind still trapped in the barn with the mysterious girl whose presence tormented him silently. Later that evening, as the family sat in the dim glow of the living room with the television on, Logan seized an opportunity to ask a burning question that had been on his mind for a long time. Leaning toward his mother, he whispered, "Mom, do I have a sister?" The question had an immediate, dramatic effect. Melissa dropped the plate she had been clearing from her hands, and the ceramic dish shattered on the floor as fragments scattered across the linoleum. Robert immediately turned, his face contorted with annoyance at the broken dish and ensuing noise, shouting, "What the hell happened?" while holding a beer. Melissa's face went pale, and with an unnaturally high voice, she replied, "Just an accident. My hands were wet, slipped right out." Robert's eyes shifted suspiciously between Melissa and Logan, demanding, "What were you two talking about?" Melissa quickly brushed it off with, "Nothing important," and urged Logan to tell his father about school events. Taken off guard by his mother's attempt to change the subject, Logan hesitated before finally murmuring, Officer Reynolds came to talk to our class about safety." "The police," at that. Robert's expression darkened further, and the mention of police cast an ominous shadow over the conversation. He slammed his hand on the table, making both Melissa and Logan jump, and demanded, "I'm trying to watch the game. Can we have some damn quiet in this house for once?" The tension was palpable as Melissa continued cleaning up the broken plate while avoiding eye contact with Logan. After dinner, Robert settled deeper into his recliner with more beers, the TV volume rising as the night progressed. Melissa sent Logan to do his homework and take a shower, her eyes silently warning him never to mention the barn again. In his bedroom, Logan sat at his small desk with his math textbook open, but the numbers blurred into insignificance as his thoughts wandered back to the frightened girl and the strange reaction he had seen in his mother's face. Something felt deeply wrong in their home, something that went far beyond the family's ongoing financial troubles. Later that night, as Melissa came to say goodnight with a forced smile and eyes darting nervously toward the hallway, as if expecting Robert to appear at any moment, Logan whispered from the doorway, "Mom, about what I asked earlier." "Not now, Logan," she interrupted softly, her voice barely audible. "Please, just not now." Gently smoothing his hair away from his forehead, a tender gesture that belied the fear in her eyes, she urged him to get some sleep and reassured him, "Everything will be fine." But as she closed his bedroom door, Logan sensed that nothing was fine. The image of the frightened girl in the barn, combined with his mother's anxious reaction and his father's stern anger, pointed to a secret that had been hidden from him for far too long. Lying in bed with his eyes fixed on the ceiling as moonlight filtered through the curtains, Logan's last conscious thoughts were haunted by her terrified face. Sleep eluded him as the hours dragged on. The glowing numbers on his digital clock, once 11:15 p.m., now seemed to mark time with agonizing slowness. His mind cycled over the possibilities. What if the police didn't believe him? What if they didn't come at all? What if Robert discovered that it was Logan who had called for help? Yet beneath the fear, a deep certainty took hold. He could not have done anything else. The girl in the barn needed help, and perhaps he was the only one who could get it for her. After what felt like an eternity, a fateful moment arrived when the barn door suddenly opened and Robert emerged, having secured the padlock twice before heading back toward the house. With heavy footsteps that echoed in the silent corridors of his home, Logan quickly closed his eyes, regulated his breathing, and pretended to be asleep as his father's presence passed by his bedroom door. The night deepened, and moments later, blue and red lights flashed through Logan's window as a car arrived in the driveway. The sound of crunching tires, the opening and closing of a car door, and distant footsteps approaching the house sent another jolt of adrenaline through him. Knocking echoed at the front door, and as Robert's angry voice resounded from upstairs, "Who the hell is coming around at this hour?" Melissa's softer tone intermingled with his, trying to calm the situation. More insistent knocking soon followed, and with trepidation, Logan crept to his bedroom door, opened it slightly, and peered into the dim hallway. He could hear his father stomping down the stairs while muttering curses, and then the front door opened to reveal a deep, authoritative voice. The officer at the door introduced himself as Deputy Carter from the Millfield County Sheriff's Department, apologizing for disturbing the household so late and asking, "What's this about?" Robert's voice, suddenly taking on a forced politeness that Logan recognized as dangerously insincere, retorted that they had received a call from the address about a person in distress. In disbelief, Robert declared, "That's ridiculous. My wife and son are both in bed. Nobody made any call." Melissa's footsteps joined the conversation as she asked, "Is everything all right, officer?" "Ma'am, someone called 911 from this residence reporting a person in need of assistance." Deputy Carter explained that the caller had specifically mentioned their barn. In the tense silence that followed, Logan could imagine the anger and fear contending in his father's face while his mother's widened eyes betrayed the secret she had long kept. At that moment, Logan's heart pounded even louder as he considered the implications. What would happen once the police left, and if his father would return? A moment of clarity struck him. This was his chance to act on behalf of the frightened girl. Unable to remain silent, he mustered all his courage and admitted, "I did. I heard cries coming from inside the barn. There's a girl in there." Robert's face darkened instantly as he muttered something about having a nightmare and placed a heavy hand on Logan's shoulder, squeezing just hard enough to cause pain. Kids his age have active imaginations. "I'm sorry you troubled us, Deputy." "I wasn't dreaming," Logan insisted firmly, shrugging away from his father's grip. The deputy's expression shifted to alertness as he looked directly at Logan, asking, "Is that right?" Robert interjected, his voice rising in anger. "There's no one in our barn. This is private property, Deputy. Unless you have a warrant, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Deputy Carter then studied Robert's face for a long moment before glancing over at Melissa, who stood frozen, her eyes darting helplessly between her husband and son. The deputy calmly explained, "I understand your concern for privacy, Mr. Anderson, but since a minor reported someone in distress, I have a legal duty to investigate. This isn't optional." Robert insisted that his son had simply had a nightmare, even claiming that Logan sometimes sleepwalked. Melissa's voice, though quiet, confirmed that nightmares were not unheard of. But Deputy Carter, with a thoughtful nod, continued, "Well, here's the situation. I've received a report that needs to be documented without confirming there's no one in the barn. I'll have to file this as an unresolved welfare check that requires a follow-up visit from Child Protective Services." Robert's growing anxiety was unmistakable as the mention of CPS filled him with either rage or fear. "That's ridiculous. "We're good parents," he exclaimed. Melissa, with eyes fixed on the floor, replied with mechanical calmness, "I'm sure you are." Deputy Carter then offered a simple solution, suggesting that a quick check of the barn would close the matter immediately, avoiding any further follow-up. Robert, however, protested weakly, explaining, "It's the middle of the night. The barn is locked up. I'd have to find the key." The deputy, in his measured tone, said, "I'm in no hurry," as his calm demeanor starkly contrasted with Robert's growing agitation. Logan, watching this tense exchange with his heart hammering in his chest, could see his father calculating and trying desperately to find a way out of the situation. For a brief moment, he feared that his father might convince the deputy to leave, leaving the girl trapped in danger. Deputy Carter then glanced around the entryway, noticing fresh mud on Robert's boots that matched the path leading to the barn, despite his earlier claims that no one goes there. "Are those your work boots, Mr. Anderson?" the deputy inquired casually as he nodded toward the muddy footwear. Robert hastily explained that the boots were indeed fresh with mud from having recently been to the barn, having checked the equipment earlier. Yet the deputy remained unconvinced. "Mr. Anderson, I'm going to be straight with you," he said firmly. "Your son made a specific report about seeing a young girl in your barn. I can even see fresh mud tracks leading to and from that barn. I noticed bruises on your wife's wrists that resemble finger marks, and you're extraordinarily resistant to a simple welfare check that would take all of 5 minutes." Robert's face contorted with anger as he defensively asked if the deputy was accusing him of something. Deputy Carter replied evenly, "I'm simply explaining why I can't leave without checking the barn. Now, we can do this the easy way with your cooperation, or I can call for backup and get a warrant. Your choice, but one way or another, I will be looking in that barn tonight." Melissa, standing silently as the tension built between her husband and the officer, revealed the internal struggle born of years of fear and obedience. Her eyes darted between Robert and Logan as if caught between maternal protection and the desperate need to tell the truth. It was then that Deputy Carter reached for his radio, stating, "I'm going to call this and let my department know where I am and what I'm doing." As he began speaking into his radio, Robert's demeanor shifted to a dangerous calm, and he replied, "Fine, let's go look in the damn barn. You'll see there's nothing there but my son's imagination." Deputy Carter finished his call and gestured toward the barn door, saying, "After you, Mr. Anderson." Robert snatched a flashlight from a kitchen drawer and stomped toward the door, with the deputy following closely. Logan attempted to join them, but his mother quickly grabbed his arm, whispering, "Stay here." Yet Logan insisted softly, "I need to show them where she is," and despite Melissa's hesitation, he hurried to catch up with Deputy Carter, carefully staying close to the officer and as far away from his father as he could. As they crossed the yard together, the deputy maintained a hand near his holster while his eyes never left Robert's back. The night was quiet except for the sound of their footsteps on the gravel path and the distant call of a nightboard, all of which added to the surreal tension of the evening. When they finally reached the barn, Robert fumbled with the padlock, his movements deliberately slow to mask his unease. "See, it's locked up tight. No one could get in or out," he claimed. The deputy instructed him calmly, "Open it, please." Yet Robert continued to stall, pretending to struggle with the key as if it were stuck. "Damn things are always sticking," he mumbled, but Deputy Carter's suspicion grew with each passing second. "Mr. Anderson, I need you to open that lock now," demanded the deputy. As Robert finally inserted the key into the padlock, he suddenly shifted tactics. "You know what? I've had enough of this nonsense. This is my property. I don't consent to this search," he declared, yanking the key from the lock and turning to face the deputy. "Get a warrant if you want to look inside." But Deputy Carter, basing his insistence on the specific report from Logan, the physical evidence he had observed, and Robert's own behavior, said firmly, "I have reasonable suspicion that a person may be in danger. I don't need a warrant for a welfare check under these circumstances." Reaching again for his radio, he stated, "I'm calling for backup. Please step away from the barn door." Robert's face twisted with both rage and fear, and in a sudden movement that caught both Logan and the deputy by surprise, he lunged forward in an attempt to reach the barn first. The deputy reacted with professional speed, grabbing Robert's arm and using his momentum to spin him around. In one fluid motion, Robert ended up face down on the ground, with the deputy's knee pressing firmly into the middle of his back as he retrieved his handcuffs. "Robert Anderson, you're interfering with a police investigation," Deputy Carter said calmly despite the physical struggle. "Stay down and put your hands behind your back." With Robert now restrained on the ground, cursing and threatening legal action, Melissa made a split-second decision that would forever change their lives. She had followed them to the barn in silent terror, hidden in the shadows, watching the confrontation unfold. Now, seeing her husband subdued, something shifted inside her. Summoning every ounce of courage she could, Melissa stepped forward into the pool of moonlight. Her face, pale but determined, betrayed a lifetime of fear as she reached down and slipped her hand into Robert's pocket, ignoring his angry threats and protests. Her trembling fingers closed around a small key, which she held out toward Deputy Carter with a quaver in her voice. "This is the key to the padlock. There's someone in there, a girl Robert brought home 3 years ago." At these words, Robert's face contorted with uncontrollable rage, and he shouted, "Shut your mouth, Melissa! Don't you dare!" But before he could continue, Deputy Carter interjected firmly, securing Robert further with handcuffs. "Ma'am, are you telling me there actually is someone being held in this barn?" asked the deputy, his tone serious. With tears streaming down her face, Melissa nodded, recounting in a choked voice that she had found the little girl and was forced to keep her hidden because Robert had threatened to kill them both if she ever told anyone. He had convinced her that no one would believe her anyway. Despite Robert's furious threats, Deputy Carter calmly led him toward a nearby fence post to temporarily secure him. Deputy Carter then radioed for additional backup. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Carter. I need immediate backup at 4587 County Road 19. We have a possible kidnapping situation involving a juvenile victim. Suspect in custody. Scene is not secure. Request additional units and an ambulance on standby." As the radio crackled with confirmation, Melissa's hand continued to tremble as she nearly dropped the key while handing it to the deputy. Comforted by her small son's hand in hers, Melissa managed to stand strong as additional backup arrived within minutes. 2 more cruisers pulled into the farmyard with flashing lights and silent sirens as officers quickly secured Robert. Deputy Carter and another officer then approached the barn with flashlights drawn, instructing Melissa and Logan, "Stay here with Officer Peterson," referring to a female officer who soon joined them at their side. From the doorway, Logan watched as his mother's arm wrapped protectively around him, and they waited together in tense silence while the barn door slowly swung open with a creak that echoed across the farmyard. Inside the barn, beams of flashlight cut through the darkness in sweeping arcs, methodically revealing every shadowy corner. Time seemed to stretch infinitely as they waited, the silence interrupted only by Robert's muffled protest from where he was held. Melissa's anxiety was visible in the way her arm tightened around Logan's shoulder, her body trembling with fear. After what felt like an eternity, Deputy Carter emerged from the barn, speaking in his radio with a tense yet controlled voice. "Dispatch, this is Carter. We need an ambulance now. We have a juvenile female, approximately 5 to 7 years old, malnourished, and in need of immediate medical attention." Approaching Melissa and Logan with a grave expression, Deputy Carter inquired softly, "Ma'am, we found a young female matching the description of Olivia Parker, who went missing 3 years ago from the county fair. Can you confirm how long she's been here?" At his words, Melissa broke down, her legs giving way as she sank to the ground. Officer Peterson swiftly moved to support her as she began sobbing uncontrollably. Between gasps for air, she admitted, "I've known about Olivia for nearly 2 years. I found her when Robert was away at an equipment auction. She was so thin, so scared. I started sneaking food to her when I could, and even cleaned her clothes sometimes." Her voice cracked with emotion as she recalled the terrifying threats from Robert, who had warned her he would hurt Olivia even worse if she ever tried to help her escape. Deputy Carter knelt beside her and asked softly, "Mrs. Anderson, did you ever try to get help?" Melissa, wiping her tears, confessed, "Once I called the sheriff's office anonymously, but Robert found out somehow. He hurt me badly that night and said, 'Next time it would be Logan who pays.'" Melissa's eyes darted to Logan and then away as the reality of years of terror sank in. Logan listened in stunned silence as the horrifying truth, the secret of what had been happening under their own roof for years, slowly emerged. His father had not only been strict, but a monstrous figure hiding in plain sight. With a gentle yet firm tone, Deputy Carter reassured them, "You're both safe now. He can't hurt any of you anymore." Shortly afterward, paramedics arrived and entered the barn. They emerged minutes later with Olivia on a stretcher, and Logan caught a glimpse of her pale face as the ambulance doors closed, sealing her inside. Though visibly weak, she turned her head slightly to look directly at Logan, her eyes conveying a mixture of fear and gratitude. The farm had been transformed into a crime scene, with police vehicles flashing blue and red lights across the yard. While Robert was taken away in the back of a patrol car, his angry shouts muted by the closed windows. Officers methodically documented the scene, taking photographs of the barn and searching the house with Melissa's permission, while Deputy Carter guided Melissa and Logan back into their kitchen, which had become an impromptu command center. Notebooks and recording devices captured every detail as more officers and detectives arrived from the county seat. A compassionate detective, now known as Detective Martin, sat across from Melissa and gently urged, "Mrs. Anderson, I know this is difficult, but I need you to tell me everything you know about how Olivia Parker came to be in your barn." Melissa's voice came out hollow and trembling, and she recounted that it had been shortly after the county fair 3 years ago when Robert came home late, claiming to have been helping a friend with car trouble. Her voice quivered as she recalled how strange and nervous he had seemed, and though she had initially dismissed it, the next day news of a missing child from the fair forced her to confront the truth. With a shaky breath, Melissa continued, explaining that Robert had started spending more time in the barn under the pretext of reorganizing equipment. He had secured it with a padlock, always keeping the key on his person, an action which, in retrospect, held a darker purpose. Detective Martin then asked gently, "When did you first discover Olivia?" Melissa said it was about a year after the disappearance when Robert went to Omaha for an equipment auction and stayed overnight. Needing some tools from the barn, she had used a spare key and, with trembling hands, found the little girl hidden there. Tears welled in her eyes as she recalled. She was so small, so frightened. She told me her name was Olivia and that a man had found her lost at the fair. He promised to take her to her parents, but instead brought her here. Logan listened from the end of the table as another officer took his statement. The horror of the years of abuse under their roof made his stomach churn as he tried to comprehend why no one had helped her escape. Detective Martin asked in a measured tone, "Why didn't you help her escape?" Melissa whispered, "I promised her I would, but when Robert came home, he somehow knew I'd been in the barn. He threatened to kill me, and then Logan too." Her voice broke as she recounted the fear that had silenced her for so long. As dawn broke over the farm, more details emerged about Olivia's disappearance at the county fair, a case that had haunted the small town for 3 long years, with missing posters still adorning every corner and her parents never ceasing their search. According to an officer's statement, it appeared that Robert had found Olivia wandering lost on the property after she became separated from her parents. Instead of returning her, he had kept her locked in the barn and subjected her to ongoing abuse. More would be known after doctors examined Olivia and specialists interviewed her. Meanwhile, Robert was taken into custody facing multiple felony charges, including kidnapping, false imprisonment, and assault. As the patrol car disappeared down the long driveway, Melissa seemed to physically shrink, as though the weight of years of fear and pretense had finally crushed her. A kind-faced victim advocate soon arrived to support Melissa, explaining the available resources such as counseling, support groups, and emergency housing. The advocate gently assured her There's a lot to process, but you don't have to do it alone. Logan's statement, which took over an hour to complete, described in detail how he had found his soccer ball in the barn, witnessed Olivia for the first time, watched his father's suspicious visits to the barn at night, and finally made the courageous decision to call 911. The officers praised his remarkable bravery, telling him that because of his actions, Olivia would soon be reunited with her family. Still, their words barely did justice to the magnitude of the events that had unfolded. As the morning progressed, news arrived that Olivia had been stabilized at the hospital. Though severely malnourished and showing clear signs of long-term confinement, doctors remained optimistic about her physical recovery, while acknowledging that the emotional healing would be a much longer journey. By mid-morning, most officers had departed, leaving only Deputy Carter and the victim advocate to remain with Melissa and Logan on the front porch. The morning air was cool and fresh, carrying with it the scent of dew-covered grass and a promise of rain, as they watched the last police car leave. Deputy Carter crouched beside Logan, his voice gentle yet firm as he said, "Logan, I want you to know that what you did last night, making that call, was exactly the right thing. It took tremendous courage." Logan looked down at his trembling hands and whispered, "I should have called sooner, as soon as I saw her yesterday. I acted when many adults wouldn't have." With a reassuring smile, the deputy replied, "Because of you, Olivia is going home to her family. You are a hero, son." Melissa joined them on the porch, her eyes red-rimmed, but shining with a clarity that seemed to lift the perpetual fog of fear. Pulling Logan into a tight embrace, she whispered, "You showed more courage than I ever could. I'm so sorry I failed us both." In the quiet aftermath, Deputy Carter informed them that they would need to come to the station later that day to formalize their statements, as the district attorney would also want to speak with them to ensure that no one would ever be hurt again. Melissa, still holding Logan's hand, promised, "We'll be there. Whatever it takes to make sure he never hurts anyone again." With that, as the deputy's car disappeared down the driveway, Melissa and Logan remained on the porch, watching the sun climb higher in the sky. In the distance, the barn, once a forbidden shadow looming over their lives, stood draped in crime scene tape, its secrets finally exposed after years of suppression. A sense of cautious hope began to replace the oppressive despair. "What happens now?" Logan finally asked in a small voice, the question hanging between them like the promise of a fresh start. Melissa took a deep breath, her voice steady yet filled with the resolve of someone determined to rebuild their life. "Now we heal together, and we ensure that Olivia gets to do the same with her family." For the first time in years, Logan felt that glimmer of hope. Though the nightmare was far from over, with trials, testimonies, counseling sessions, and difficult conversations still ahead, the truth had emerged, and with it came the possibility of a new beginning. As the morning light illuminated the farm, everything appeared different, clearer, as though a perpetual fog had finally lifted. The red barn, once an ominous symbol of secrecy, now seemed diminished, its menacing power broken. Logan felt both exhausted and lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his small shoulders. The terrible secrets that had poisoned their home for so long were no longer hidden. Even as he thought of the sorrow and injustice, his heart recognized the brave actions he had taken. Melissa softly confessed, "I never thought I'd have the courage to stand up to him. All these years, I told myself I was protecting you by staying silent, but you were the brave one, Logan." Leaning against her, Logan replied with quiet understanding, "You were brave too, Mom. You gave the deputy the key and told the truth when it mattered most." They walked back into the house together, and in the kitchen, Melissa surveyed the mess left behind by the officers: coffee cups, paperwork, and scattered belongings. Normally, she would have immediately begun cleaning, but today she simply looked at the chaos with a detached expression, silently promising herself that they both needed to rest after the ordeal. Climbing the stairs slowly together, Melissa paused at Logan's bedroom door and whispered with genuine pride, "I'm proud of you, and I promise things will be different now." Inside his room, Logan pulled the blinds closed and climbed into bed fully clothed. He thought deeply about Olivia, silently hoping that she would truly be okay. His mind wandered to what might happen to his father, the farm, his mother, and to himself. Though the future remained uncertain, it no longer seemed as frightening as the controlled terror they had endured for so long. As sleep finally claimed him, his last conscious thought was of Olivia's eyes, a fleeting glance of fear and gratitude as she was carried away in the ambulance. He held on to the hope that, someday when the trials were over, he might see her again, not as a victim, but as a regular child with a future as bright as his own. In the quiet aftermath of that fateful night, with every secret and dark deed finally brought into the light, the first steps toward healing had begun. Not only for Olivia, but for Melissa, for Logan, and for an entire community determined to never again allow such darkness to thrive in their midst. The Red Barn, which once loomed ominously over the family's existence, now stood as a silent testament to a past that they would one day overcome. The soccer ball that had set all of this in motion lay forgotten in the corner, a small object that had been the catalyst for change, revealing the depth of the hidden terrors that had poisoned their lives. And as Logan drifted into sleep that morning, every word of his journey, each moment of fear, courage, and hope, remained etched in his heart as the first steps toward a brighter, more honest future for all.